Hey guys, Andrew Dobie here with Just a Chat With. If this is your first listen, Just a Chat With is a podcast series where we talk about branding and creativity with the world's best in class. In the last episode, we sat down with Philip Mounier, who is the Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of Sid Lee, one of the world's most premier creative agencies with offices in Montreal, Toronto, Paris, New York, LA and Seattle. Go check that one out if you haven't already. Before then, we've also had the likes of David Martin, founder of Fantasy Interactive, Design Matters podcast host Debbie Millman, world-renowned designer Michael Wolff, and a whole host of other amazing guests. In this episode today, though, I sit down with Kevin Swanepoel, who is the CEO of the One Club for Creativity based out of New York. We talk about some amazing initiatives that the One Club has been creating during the pandemic to support the creative industry, and some of the work they've been doing to positively impact some of the diversity and inclusion challenges that we face in the creative industry. We also hear some great stories from Kevin's career, his early career in the creative industries, how he got into the creative industries, and how he came about buying and owning his first creative agency. Kevin also gives some great insights into where the future of agency models are going and what roles brands play in today's world. A really enjoyable episode, and so enjoy it. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of Just a Chat With. I'm your host, Andrew Dobie. Today I'm very excited as we're here with the amazing Kevin Swanepoel, who is the CEO of the One Club for Creativity, which is the world's foremost non-profit organization recognizing creative excellence in advertising and design. As CEO, Kevin leads the One Show, which is one of the most prestigious award shows in the communications industry. He also shaped the global brand of the One Club, providing leadership for its expansion into China and beyond. With 35 years experience in media and marketing and creative industries, Kevin is a frequent speaker on current advertising trends. He has appeared on Fox, NBC and CBS, and also been published in Adweek, Advertising Age, Creativity and AdHoc. Kevin established Creative Week, the pre-eminent festival in New York, which I very fortunately attended 2 years ago for their Executive Creative Summit, which was amazing, by the way. The festival celebrates the intersection of advertising, design, digital media, and the arts. Kevin also travels and lectures frequently and is enthusiastically involved in advertising education and design throughout the world. Kevin, thank you so much for being here. How are things? How has 2020, 2021 been treating you?
Hey, well, Andrew, honestly, it's great to be here. And, as you say, welcome to the new year. Let's hope this year is slightly different to last year. Let's hope we can gather again like we did a couple of years ago at Creative Week. And, honestly, somebody said to me, they got a free 7-day trial of 2021, and they decided to give it back because it was just as bad as 2020. So, looking at the first 7 days in our country, it was pretty tough to swallow. But hopefully, after the inauguration, things will get really good and better. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it, isn't it? It's kind of hard because with a new year, you kind of think, everything changes, but reality is we're still here, we're still figuring it all out, and I suppose a lot of your business is based around events and award ceremonies. I mean, how's it affected you? How's it affected work and kind of everything that you're doing?
So, really, Andrew, it's been very interesting. Last year, we were really one of the fortunate shows. We had the best year ever for the One Show. A lot of award shows couldn't say that. Some of them were cancelled. Some of the in-person events were cancelled. But what was really interesting is that we had set up really early. We developed our own systems about 18 years ago, and we've been building on these systems. So when it came to switching to virtual judging, we were able to do that without even missing a beat. So I very early on called that we take it virtual and take the show virtual. I had people saying to me, like, "You crazy, we got to gather in person, it'll be okay." But I had seen what was going on in China because we have an office in China, and I wasn't taking any risks because these events, when we plan them out, you need at least 9 months of planning to be able to do a big in-person event in New York. We book our event space 2 years out. It's that long a lead time. So for us, it was a big shift, but we were one of the first to have to go out there and redo, or I hate to just use the word pivot, but we were the first where it's like, okay, the one show is one of the first award shows in the season, and we had to change suddenly from in-person judging to online judging, from an in-person show to what do you do now when you do your awards virtually, So it was a very, very difficult process. The team did an incredible job. And it taught us something, actually. It taught us some really important lessons. One, we'll never, ever go back to what it was before, So what will a award show look like in the future? Well, we very quickly realized that we are a global organization. So we had almost 4 or 5 times the number of people engaged with our brand, engaged with the show than we usually do, in person. So I think going forward, we'll definitely do things in a hybrid way because it'll allow us to connect with our global audience in a better way. And, it'll cut the costs of them having to come to New York, but still being able to get involved and be engaged. So we've got some things up our sleeve that we're working on right now that I'm super excited about for 2021. Unlike some other shows who are hell-bent on they're going to do a live event, I'm taking the opposite approach. I think this year we are going to still do virtual judging, and our show will be virtually this year because our show is sort of due to be the one show, and the Art Directors Awards, ADC Awards, they're both meant to take place in May. So I think May is too soon. People won't be gathering in person. So, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and I think as you say, there's lots of great advantages, aren't there? The scale that you can now reach. Obviously, as a non-profit, it means you don't have the costs that are associated with creating a large physical event, which you can, I suppose, then divert some of that to do the good that you want to do as an organization.
I'm so glad you actually made mention of that because something that we actually did was. Immediately when this started happening, I started looking at the impact that this pandemic and people having to stay in their place was going to affect all the students. And so I said to the team, especially our education team, I said, we usually do portfolio reviews for young students who are just graduating. We do the Young Ones Awards, which is an award show for college kids. And so suddenly they weren't going to be having portfolio reviews because nobody is going to actually do a review for you. And then they weren't going to get internships. So we started tackling it first, and we built another system. So we took our revenue and we started putting it into systems that will actually really be here for a long time, and it'll give us a leg up over any of the opposition because, suddenly we've got an online system that will allow us to give portfolio reviews to students across the globe with as many creatives as we want. And these are all, being proprietary, and they built, from the ground up to serve our audience. So that happened. We did virtual portfolio reviews, which was very successful. And then we started tackling for the young creatives the ability to get an internship. Because all the agencies, now nobody is working in the agencies, they weren't offering internships. And that's another really important part of a young professional's career path. It gets them a foot in the door, they get to see an agency, they get to work with creatives, and most of them actually end up getting a job, their first jobs from that internship. So, we jumped through some more hoops, and we took our internships online, and we created virtual internships. Now, we had no idea how that was going to work out, because you've got all these creatives sitting in at home, not even in the agency. You've got these students all over the place. We then, for the first time, were able to do internships for hundreds of students. And it was so successful that all the agencies that did it have been hitting us up okay, you've got to do this again. So we are just starting the internships and the portfolio reviews for students, but we're starting it now in February. I must say, more than anything, the number of notes that I've got from young students to say, literally, you have, if it wasn't for the One Club and your programs, I would still be without a job. I would be, living in my parents' house, and now I'm employed full time at an agency. So it's been remarkable the effect we've had on the industry by looking at the problems, and instead of in a time of crisis, backing down and not doing something. Yeah. What I was doing is okay, in a term of crisis, where do we find opportunity? And we also had on the One Club website, we've got a very active jobs board. So for agencies, they can go on there, they can post a job, and we have a very high traffic website. So we decided, we had corporate members emailing us and saying, yeah, I know there's doom and gloom, because the headlines in America was there's 53,000 jobs going to be lost in advertising in the ad industry. And we had a couple of agencies who are corporate members calling us and saying, hey, we need to hire. We've got some new business. We need to hire. So our membership team, they also, I said to everybody, everything's on the table. If you see an opportunity, let's just do it. And our membership team came to us and said, look, I know that people are losing their jobs, but we've got people who have jobs that they are trying to fill. Yeah. So we took down our paid jobs board, and we made a free online registry for any agency who had a job that they could post it there. So it'd be no cost, just post it up. And it was a very sort of low-tech thing. It was this Google Doc that we put out. It was rough and crude, but man, the number of people that got hired. And we had an agency who was out of San Diego, and they were looking to hire one person. In the end, they hired three, because the quality of the people who were applying were just so ridiculously off the charts. So it was a really special moment for us,
Yeah, and I think I've seen so much of that as well, and I think it's so nice to see that the creative industry seems to have got together. In the UK and Scotland, when everything happened with COVID, we went as an agency and we created a creative industry COVID support group, and within a few weeks we had 4,000 people join it, and we had a very similar approach, is that we found a partner that would give us a job board and open that up, and it's been so nice to see that kind of everyone supporting each other. And I think, it shows great leadership from the One Club in terms of, I think that's when you're in the position of you're a membership organization for the creative industry, these are the times that you stand up and show your leadership qualities. And it's clear that you have as a CEO.
What's really funny is that when I first, I've been with the organization, as you know, for 23 years, and I've been as a CEO for 6 years. But when I started as CEO, one of the things I asked the board to do was to, let's get together and recraft our mission statement. And the mission of the One Club for Creativity is to celebrate and support the global creative community. So for me, that is such a strong statement. And anything that we do, I look at that and say, well, does it fit? So we are very, very focused on our mission. We are here to recognize and support the global creative community, not just the American community, the global community. And, a real real big project that we did this past year in 2020. And, I hate to say it, one of the things that people say is like, oh man, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. I'm saying like, holy shit. Sorry, but
it's okay. You can swear. you can swear away.
No, exactly. But it's just like, holy crap, man. If 2021 can be as good as 2020, I'll be grateful. Because one of the big things we do is we have 8 years ago, about 8 years ago, 12 years ago, I started the Inclusion and Diversity Department, 2008. And we are here to try and bring about more diversity in the industry. And we have boot camps, they're free, to try and get more Black people into the industry. And so, we're working on all these things. And Black Lives Matter is happening. It is this big movement across the US with the killing of George Floyd. And all crap is breaking loose, and we are a real diverse organization. The makeup of our board is very, very diverse. The makeup of our staff is diverse. And one of our staff members, Bob Isherwood, who was the global chief creative officer for Saatchi many years, he's working in our professional development department. And he saw a post from Oriel Lyons Davis talking about how difficult it is to get into this industry because, in America, if you want to get into advertising, you need to have gone through portfolio school, and that costs you about $40,000. Oh. And there's very few people, apart from a privileged few, that can pay $40,000 because you've probably gone to college already, and so you've got some sort of college debt. And then once you finish your degree and you get told, hey, there's this great opportunity in advertising, but in order to do that, you've got to go to a portfolio school. So you've already studied, you've got college debt, and now you've got to load up with another $40,000 worth of college debt. And he had put this post out on LinkedIn, and Bob brought it to me, and he said, "Look at this, man." He said, we should get involved and we should make something happen. And it was very funny because I had written a note to a couple of our board members on September 29th, 2016. I actually went back and I looked for the email because what I pitched to them was, hey, here's a great idea. Why don't we create a free portfolio school for Black creatives? And at the time, the timing wasn't right. And the board said to me, it's a great idea, but, you got to think bigger than that, So anyway, fast forward to last year, and we just decided we're going to create this free portfolio school for Black creatives. And, there'll be no college debt. It's free. You're going to come out at the end of this thing and you're going to have a great book, or as we call it, a dope book. And you're going to get employed, So we started about, and I didn't even ask the board's permission. I'm doing this, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And so we got this thing together, and then I presented to the board, and the board was like, "Oh, this is amazing," especially with the movement that was happening across America. Mm-hmm. And so we were pretty naive, to be honest with you. We decided we're going to create one school. It's called One School. And we'll be opening applications for the next cohorts starting on February 4th. But we started with this idea that we're going to have one school in New York virtually. Mm-hmm. And we'll take 15 students because we believe education needs to be done in person and it needs to be done in small groups. You can't have a big class. So we created the website over a weekend. We went live with this thing, and suddenly we had 280 applications,
Fantastic.
And we thought, oh, crazy, what have we done? So we were sifting through some of them, and there were some really fantastic people. But we started getting this correspondence with people via email saying, this is great because you're doing it at 6:00 on Tuesday and 6:00 on Thursday. But I'm on the West Coast, and I have to still have a job. I've got to put food on the table. I've got to, have a roof over my head. And at 3:00 on the West Coast, which is your 6:00, I'm still at work. So I can't do this, and I want to do it. So very, very quickly, with 1 week, we decided, right, let's start up a school on the East Coast and a school on the West Coast. So New York and LA. And we took 30 students, 30 unbelievably talented students. And so we've been instructing them. And they just about to graduate. And I can say that we are really proud to be adding 30 Black creatives to the industry to really help solve the diversity issue. And the program was met with such rigor by the industry. Big brands came out, agencies came out, small agencies, like agencies who have 1 or 2 clients. They sponsored a seat for a Black creative. So all the agencies paid to have these students' tuition taken care of. We paid the instructors, we paid the course directors, and anyway, so 30 were done. Now we started getting calls from South Africa, from London, from the Midwest, from Atlanta. Like, hey, we've seen this program. You have to start this program in our city. So
that was really my next question. That's where my brain was going. I was like, you need to do this here. It's like
I know. It's crazy because everybody is really struggling with this diversity issue.
Yeah.
Our industry, unfortunately, is not as diverse as it should be, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But I think one of the key reasons is the ability to get access, and also for price and the means to be able to get yourself through a portfolio school is just so prohibitive. So I'm thrilled to announce that we're going to be, and this is actually, anyway, I'm going to tell you because it'll happen shortly, but we're going to be announcing that we are going to be opening up in both Chicago and Atlanta in the US. We are in discussions with people in South Africa and in London as well. So really exciting. But, that was only part of the story. Okay. So, and again, when I speak to the incredible team we have at the One Club it's just amazing. We have some of the best people in the industry. And Bob Isherwood turned around and he was looking at this list of 280 people that had applied, and we'd given 30 people opportunity. But what about the others who didn't get opportunity? And Bob came to me with this idea. He said, why don't we create, because we've already done this mentorship and internship program with agencies, why don't we create a program for the people who didn't make it? Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, Bob, all right, you go ahead, make it happen. So we used the same internship module that we had sort of worked out. We went back out to all the sponsoring agencies and we said to them, look, we had just incredible talent that wanted to join us. We could only take 30. We've got, over 200 amazing people still out there that want to do this program, but maybe they just need a bit of guidance to get their first book together so that they'll stand a better chance next year.
Yeah.
2021. So we ended up having 89 agencies sponsor, or not sponsor, but they hosted these internships for these 89 creatives. They took 89 in total. And I got to tell you, some of them already got hired. They didn't even go to one school. They've already been hired by the agencies because there was such great underlying talent there. But, my point here is that what school or organization looks at the people who didn't make it and tries to get them to a good point where they're going to, prosper and actually get an opportunity. So this is something that we're really proud of. We are making a huge difference in the diverse or bringing about more diversity into this industry. And we have a similar program for women, because we think, gender is another, really important part that needs to be addressed in this industry.
Yeah, it's so inspiring, Kevin. I think it shows some of the greatness that's coming out of the challenges, of COVID and all the impact, and I think I'm very inspired to hear what you're doing, and how you found that focus. I think making practical steps like that are how you make change. I suppose for anyone that's interested in kind of reading more about the program or hearing more about that, where do they go to check it out? Where?
So if you just go to oneschoolny.org is the One School application, and those will open up in February. And so anybody can apply. You don't have to be on the East Coast or West Coast, but if you can make the times that the classes are, that's great. And they'll be in, as I say, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, and LA. But the other thing that I'd love to chat about, talking about other opportunities, we started having a look at the industry, and with these headlines of 53,000 people being laid off, and these are people that have been working at an agency for a long time. They are great traditional art directors, copywriters, strategists, planners, you name it, and If we have a look at that, they've got a really solid skill set. And the next thing that we thought of was, how do we help these people who have been laid off and reskill them with some digital skills, so that they stand a better chance of being hired in the future, and maybe even they'll get hired on the brand side, or at a different type of agency. And so what we did is we've teamed up with a group out of the Northwest in Seattle, and School of Visual Communications, SVC. They are a really great school when it comes to teaching UX and UI.
Yeah.
And something that we looked at was, traditional creatives got, they know how to work with color. They know how to work with typography. They've got great presenting skills. They've got all these skills that are their core foundation skills. But if you added on 3 or 4 other digital skills, and you gave them the ability to do UX, UI, and do research and do content strategy, we started doing some searches, and this was really an amazing statistic that we found. If you search for just an art director or copywriter, currently, right now, I did the search just before the end of the year, you'd get between 450 to 550 jobs for either an art director or a copywriter. Go and do the search for a UX, UI, or UX designer or UI designer or content strategist. For UX and UI, there are over 11,000 jobs available for each one of those disciplines. 11,000.
Wow.
But there's, from a designer or an art director, copywriter, 400 or 500. And for a content strategist, there's about 5,000 jobs. So what we did is we started something called Second Skill. And what we are doing is we're trying to build on traditional creatives, give them a really, sharp digital skill set in either UX or UI or content strategy, and retool them. That industry is growing. It's the fastest growing industry. If you have a look at the opportunities, if there's 11,000 jobs, it means that you're going to get multiple offers, and you're not going to go in at the lowest level, because you've got already great creative chops and skill sets that adds to UX UI. So that's what we're doing right now. We are offering a program called Second Skill, and that's secondskill.org, and that's 2nd skill.org. And you can go there and apply to jump on this course. that, unlike one school, there is a cost to it. We are doing a revenue share with the SBC, but we just think that this is a great opportunity to upskill traditional creatives. I think that they will be less likely to be let go, or they'll be hired by either the brand side or the ad tech industry, or an agency. So the opportunities are just far greater for them.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I often talk to a lot of younger creatives, and I always try and encourage them, to have kind of like a couple of superpowers, and in a sense, if you imagine, there's five designers interviewing for a job. If you're a designer that also says, I can do Unity, or I can, I've got, I can Cinema 4D. Well, you stand out. You've suddenly elevated yourself because you've married up a couple of things, and I think you've identified another great initiative. I think that's really really important to understand.
Absolutely, Andrew. I couldn't agree more. If you are coming into the industry, find those superpowers that are different to other people. So that you can stand apart, because there's lots of art directors, there's lots of copywriters, there's lots of designers, but why should we be hiring you? What skill set are you going to bring to the agency that will actually help us with our new business or our clients or stuff?
Yeah, no, fantastic. So Kevin, you're in the position as CEO, and I can imagine for a lot of people listening, to you, it's very inspiring that the change that you're making happen, the positive change that you're making happen for the industry right now. And I suppose for some of the younger listeners, I think it'd be really interesting to know, how did you weave your way to get to where you are? Where did it all start for you? How did you find your way into the advertising industry? Did you always think you would be there? And just maybe nice to hear a little bit of your personal story.
Sure. So it was really interesting. As a youngster, I grew up as a surfer in Durban, in South Africa, and I decided to go to art school, and I became a graphic designer, and I paid my way through art school, airbrushing surfboards for Safari Surf Shop in Durban. And it was a crappy job. You're in the rooms, and you just got dust everywhere. But it was something I was really passionate about. Was I got into airbrushing. That was my super skill then. When I was at college, I got into airbrushing, and I had a couple of friends who wanted their motorcycles painted and their vans painted. And in those days, I used to illustrate with an airbrush. So that was a fun thing. I ended up going into advertising. I really wanted to be an architect. That was what I really wanted to do. And I ended up saying, look, there's this incredible depression in South Africa at the time when I was looking to choose a career path, and advertising seemed a better option, where I could probably make some money with my art skills, and that worked out just that way. But the funny thing is, in South Africa is that you actually have to sign up for national service. No longer, but when I was there, the minute you've stopped studying, the army calls you up, and so I got my call up papers. I had sailed from Durban to Mauritius on a sailing boat, 66-foot boat, and I got to Mauritius, and my dad called me and he said, "Hey, sonny boy, your call up papers come. You've got to fly back to South Africa to get enrolled in the army." So I went from art college. I had my first job at a small agency in Durban called Heath O'Donoghue, and then I took some time off and I sailed. But I went to the army, and that was a really interesting experience. I ended up not being the regular, because I don't do anything that's regular. I'm like the person who does the exact opposite. So army is for 2 years, and I decided that, and then you had to do army camps every year, and it could be a 3-month camp. So I decided, like, screw this. I'm going to sign up for special forces. So I ended up doing that. So it was a pretty crazy time, and thankfully I came out of it on the other side. But when I came out of the army, I went back to Heath O'Donoghue and I said, look, hey, I'm back, and they said, well, we just had to lay off a whole lot of people, the economy was really bad. And so I ended up, like so many students right today, I ended up living at home. I said, like, screw that. I'm going to just like start up a studio in my dad's garage. At that stage, it was still like, drawing board and letraset, and nobody would even know what letraset is today. But anyway, it was like you had to lay your type by hand and stuff like that. So I started up my dad's back garage, and I was one of the luckiest son of a guns. I had this little client, and they said to me, there's this World Expo that's going to be happening in our town. Take our plans and get them approved, because they asked me to just draw up their plans for their exhibition stand. So I'm standing in the line there, and there's a guy in front of me talking to another person saying, holy shit, somebody's going to make a shit ton of money. So I tapped the guy on the shoulder. I said, like, okay, so tell me about this. He said, no, there's this tender out to draw and paint the entire exterior of the expo.
Oh.
I said, well, he said, yeah, there's only one person who's actually put a bid in. So I said, okay. He said, yeah, and the bid was X. So I said, okay, well, that's really good information.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so thanks, Dave. So I said, well, how do I put a bid in? And he said, well, just go to the office there and ask him for a form. So I went to the office there, got a form, and I put in a bid minus X. And lo and behold, we got the contract. So it was crazy, because suddenly I went from not really having a job to trying to make stuff happen, And I then went out and hired my entire college class to help me at night. And we literally painted the entire expo with all these drawings that there was a competition that kids had entered. And so we put this thing, we put overhead projectors on long extension cords, and we had to take a marker and redraw these kids' illustrations on the exterior. And anyway, so long story short, I got a huge break, and I was able to generate a lot of money. And then I heard of this agent, and I actually just bought a house then. So I ended up buying a house in Durban. And about 2 weeks later, I was at our printer getting some printing done for a client that I had. And this printer said to me, man, there's this incredible person who's in Johannesburg, and she's looking to leave the country and go to Australia. But she has this agency and she's just closing it down. Do you want to buy some of the equipment? So I said to Barry, I said to him, what about buying the agency? He says, no, she's just going to sell the equipment and she's going to close it down. So I said, well, if I bought the equipment, will she give me the book basically and make the introductions? And he said, I don't know, let's call her and ask her. And so 2 weeks later, I went to Johannesburg. I left. I just bought this house in Durban. And I said to my dad, I'm going to Johannesburg and I'm going to buy this agency. And
How old were you? How old were you here, Kevin?
I was 23.
23, okay.
23. And so I go to Johannesburg. My dad is just like losing his mind, because it's like, okay, so what are you going to do with the house? So my brother rented the house from me. Didn't pay any rent, but he rented it probably. so I go to Joburg, and I actually changed the name of this agency and started what was then Creative and Strategic. It was a small agency in Johannesburg. Mnet, which is a television station in Johannesburg, they had Y&R as their agency of record, but we out-dojoed them. We like ninjaed them totally, because like a big traditional agency, they'd get a brief to do something, and they'd sit in it for 3 months, and then it would be the week before the event, and they don't have invitations, they don't have stuff. And so we used to do all basically below the line stuff. And it was fantastic, man. It was really, really great. But, that honeymoon ended on a not so happy note, because I had a partner who I ended up taking on a partner because we were growing, and in the end, it didn't work out. So we shut the agency down. And I was one of the first agencies to implement a whole Apple computer line. And then the guys at Apple approached me and said, look, Apple computers, and I set up my own studio with them and everything like that. You're the first agency to implement, Apple computers. Why don't you come and work with us? So I ended up getting hired at Apple, which was one of the best experiences I've ever had. So I had small entrepreneurship, and then I had big corporate culture, and that was fantastic. One of the fun memories I have of Apple is we had this T3 line, which was like a direct link to the Apple office in Cork in Ireland, and so it would be at 4:00 our time in South Africa. There would be this war cry around the office, gathering. And at that stage, we used to jump on and play Marathon, which was a first-person shooter game with our friends in Cork Island, So it was the early days of the internet, and it was really fun. The first sort of network game that you could play between two countries, So it was fantastic stuff, and we used to have a lot of fun doing that. And then an opportunity arose. We had this young guy who was an intern at Apple, and the One Club was bringing the One Show, this big advertising award show, to South Africa, and they were sponsored by Apple, and they were going to have the exhibition in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. And this intern that had been given the assignment of make it happen completely botched it. He didn't do a great job, and the then CEO of the One Club lost her mind. She just absolutely just came down on the the general manager of Apple in Johannesburg, and being the type of person I am, he turned around to me and he said, just fix this. So I jumped in, man, and I hustled, and we got the exhibition. It was a great success. But at that stage, talking about superpowers, I had been programming in what was called Macromedia Director at the time.
Oh, I remember it. It's the most painful thing ever.
Right, exactly. So, but I'm always
Lingo.
learning. Yeah. So I'm always learning. So and this is another thing for students out there. Just keep on finding different little bits of superpowers that you can add to your arsenal of stuff. So I'd been programming and director, and there were these heavy annuals for the One Show. And when you open the page, there'd be these little 3 pictures that represented a TV script, and they still had the round edges the way you'd actually have a TV script in the agency. And I said, Mary, this doesn't make sense. There's this thing called, a CD-ROM, and I can put those TV commercials onto a CD-ROM, and you can put a CD-ROM in the annual, and then people can watch the TV commercials. So I did one. I created this interface, and I sent it to her, and she wrote me a letter back, because there wasn't really there was email, but she wasn't on email. She wrote me a letter back, and she said, "Well, how much do you want for this?" So I said, just X dollars, and which seemed like a lot to me, and immediately, okay, done. So I created the first CD-ROM for the One Show that went into the annual.
Sounds like you underpriced that.
Yeah, like way underpriced. It was ridiculous, If I think back now, it's just ridiculous. But then I said to her, look, I've got an idea. There's this thing called the internet that's starting to happen. You should have an advertising award show for interactive media. So I wrote up this whole thing. She said, well, write something up. And at this stage, I got her onto email. So we're like emailing each other. And she said, well, write something up and I'll present it to the board. So I wrote this whole idea up of having the first interactive award show for advertising and sent it to her. And it was a summer board meeting. They barely had a quorum. So there was no opposition to this. She pitched this idea and the board signed off on it. And then they said, oh, well, you should consider hiring this guy to come out and run it because like none of us know anything about this shit, you know. So she did. She made me an offer, and I left Apple and Apple South Africa and came to the US to run this, and that's where I've been for 20. Well, this year it'll be 24 years. Yeah, crazy.
Wow, that's a great story, or many great stories within a story there.
Fun stuff, man. Fun stuff.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Yeah. So, I suppose maybe for the last section of the episode today is I'm quite interested. You meet so many inspirational people, so many amazing agencies, so many amazing brands, and I think there's a really nice shift and change in the way that brand, I suppose, finds its place in the world. And, very much like how you've used the One Club brand for good, I think, we're seeing a really positive shift in business and brand that businesses are becoming much more, value driven and using their brands for good. And I suppose kind of two things. I'm interested, because you'll be seeing where things are going. Where do you see the next sort of step change for brand? And I suppose in amongst that, I would love to know, how you define or see brand or talk about it in today's world.
So something, and I'm going to take this from my standpoint. This whole COVID thing, when it happened, there was PPP, which was, a way that the government could help you stay afloat by giving you and your staff some funding and stuff like that. And it was funny because I was listening to PPP and I was just thinking, put people and purpose above profit. And so for me, that's what we did in 2020. We didn't lay off a single person, and we put our people and our purpose before profit. And it worked out really well for us. A huge trend we've seen, certainly given the events around the Black Lives Matter movement that's gone through the US, we've seen brands being more accountable. We've just seen this now with our election. The last couple of days, you've seen brands turn around and say, we are not going to support X because it doesn't align with our brand standards and our corporate beliefs. Yeah. And I think that brands are going to be more accountable. They are. They're stepping up to the plate and they're saying, we are not going to condone that. We're not going to support that. And the reason why they're doing it is because they're putting their people first. And when I say that, brands are under pressure from their staff, because if your company's ideas are not aligned with my ideas, then I, as a free agent, can go to move to a company that I'd want to work at that is in line and does represent my brand, my values as an individual. Yeah. So brands are needing to take a stance on numerous issues, whether it be gender or race or political. That they can have a political opinion and choose to either support a party or not, or to support gender equity. So I'm a firm believer that the brands going forward will be very, very focused on purpose. They will have values that they won't falter on, and if they do falter on them, they'll be held accountable by those individuals who are generally their consumer. And if a consumer decides that a brand is not or does not have their values, they will shop elsewhere or they'll buy a different product. So I think that, we've started seeing that in the last 4 or 5 years, we've started seeing advertising change. Mm-hmm. And it has been very purpose-driven. So not everything will be purpose-driven because, brands still have to focus on selling and moving product. But there will be a very purpose focus to brand value. The other thing that I'm really seeing is that brands now have the relationship with their consumer, the direct relationship, because a brand has the ability now to control their social media, and they don't just farm social media out to an agency. Some do, but generally the tight connection between a brand and their consumer is controlled by the brand nowadays. They brought social in-house because they understand it. It has to be nimble. It has to be dealt with very quickly, and it has to have the right brand voice. So they very carefully control that, and they brought that internally. If they do it externally, there's some fantastic social agencies that are doing that job for some brands. But I've seen that there's a lot of that's been brought internally. The other thing that we're seeing is the huge move for brands to build in-house studios. And this was something that happened in the 70s and the 80s, and they did some of the work, and some of the work was done well, some of the work was done badly, and we're still seeing that today, where there's work that's been done in-house that is just not great. But I'm a firm believer that there will be a place for creatives within the brand itself. And if you have a look at the likes of Apple, where Tor Marin and Nick Law and so many other creatives have moved onto the brand side, and it goes across the board. Whether you're looking at Google, they've got their Google Creative Labs. So I think the whole industry has changed dramatically. There's some brands that would not do that. I know for a fact, like Burger King, Fernando Machado, who's the CMO of Burger King, who's on our board. He doesn't see that they would ever have an internal agency, because what he wants to do is go out to the top 5, 6, 7 agencies and say, pitch me all your ideas. I want the best ideas around my brand. And he wouldn't want to be sort of hamstrung by a team internally. He wants to shop out his brand to as many great agencies as they can, just to come up with ideas. So the other big trend I've seen is the move from agency of record to project-based work, which is not a great thing for the industry. And the reason I think it's actually affecting the industry is that an agency needs to have a steady income to be able to put the skill set that they need internally. So, they need to be able to build capabilities. And it's hard to build capabilities, whether it be AR or VR or data or the likes, if you are working on a project basis, because, you then are focused on this project. And when that ends, then, what
you can find more.
What is the next? And, so I think some of the trends we're going to see within agencies is they also have to find their superpower. They've got to decide, okay, what type of agency am I going to be? And then they're going to have to hire the skill sets and the capabilities to be able to serve that. And I think we're going to go away from being sort of one size fits everything to sort of some focused agencies with certain capabilities that are going to be working, with brands. Yeah.
And I suppose, Kevin, when I was out in New York with you guys 2 years ago, I think now, we were, David Droga was there, and, the Accenture deal had just happened with Droga 5.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was very insightful. And I suppose, where is your head at, or what are you hearing in terms of, that kind of blend of consultancy, kind of hybrid with, creative industry or creative agency? Do you think we'll see lots more of that, or?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the consultancies are trying to become more creative, and I know for a fact that when you have a look at Accenture or Deloitte, these guys are buying up good creative shops to be able to help out with their, they don't have that superpower of creativity. They've got the superpower of being able to do some really complex, in-depth analysis and studies around a brand, but they don't have the creative side to that. So they are doing a lot of acquisitions. And something that you're seeing even is Sir Martin Sorrell with his S4 Capital. Yeah. They've decided what type of agency that they want to be, and they want digital superpowers. And you can see with the acquisitions that Sir Martin has done around S4 Capital is being very strategic and saying, right, okay, we are going to become this like super hard digital focused shop. And so they're buying up those types of companies. I think it's going to all boil down to what are you comfortable with, and how do you want to grow as an agency, and what's the type of work you want, Yeah,
I mean, and there was also I don't know if you noticed the other day that Twitter announced the acquisition of Weno as well. And, I suppose that's to your point earlier on of brands pulling agency in-house as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The number of creatives that have been sucked into the brand side is just incredible. In the last 2 years, it's just been just a major thing. And, so we are also focusing on the brand side ourselves, because, it's such a big part to us. When we say that we are here to support the creative industry,
brands are
creatives are brand side, they brand side as well. So, we are actively working on the brand side to work with their creatives and support and elevate them. Yeah.
Great. Well, Kevin, I'm conscious of time. As usual, I could chat away forever, but I'm sure you have plenty more to be getting on with during your day. So thanks so much for joining us on the show. And thanks to everyone who's been listening. If you want to support the podcast, please do rate and review us. Help us get the word out. It really does help. We publish a new episode on the last Monday of every month, kind of. Sometimes the Friday, sometimes the Monday. We try our best. So make sure you're subscribed, and we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Fantastic, Andrew. Thank you so much.